Hello.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Matt.
Cool. Hold on, let me turn off this music. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing okay now. That they tell you there's a trust button, but apparently you have to reload the page with the plugins first. Then the trust button appears.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because Hangouts changed or if because I recently updated Firefox, but it just completely refused to work with Firefox this time.
Yeah. I guess it's one of those things where Google just wants you to use Google-only products. Maybe it's the Hangouts on air, I guess, as opposed to the Hangouts that we have been doing. We're using a slightly different software now.
Oh, that might be it then.
Yeah. I think they're transitioning out of I think they're like sunsetting Hangouts, what we have been using. And trying to get people to use this instead of OBS or other third-party software. And that may come with some hiccups, I guess. As you know, I'm still learning the ropes. So, but we have a friend in the chat. He asked, "Did he just hear a cat?"
Yes, that was one of my cats.
Yeah. Oh, how many cats do you have?
We have 2.
Cool. 2 is a good number for cats.
It's better if they actually get along and then they play with each other. These 2 really don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I find one, it's like they just sleep all day and you feel like they're not really getting stimulated. But, 3 is insanity.
Oh, yes. Well, we had 3 at one point. Well, we've had 3 at a couple of points, but it typically doesn't last.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty hectic.
Well, also, at one point we adopted 3. One of them was very sick, so he only lasted a couple of months.
Oh, no.
And, the shelter where we got them, they didn't realize how sick he was.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that doesn't very obviously manifest at first, and then when it does, it kills them very rapidly.
Do you remember what it was called?
The initials were FIP, and if memory serves, it was feline infectious peritonitis or something of that nature.
Peritonitis.
There's a dry form, which most cats have, and it's dormant.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a wet form, and that is a fairly expedient death sentence.
Huh. All I know is itis means there's some kind of inflammation.
Well, they get a lot of fluid built up.
Oh, it looks like an immunodeficiency thing.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what it entails, but I mean, symptom-wise, it seems like they have a really bad cold, like a respiratory infection.
Yeah.
But there's just nothing you can do about it.
Gosh, that's tough.
It is. And that was the only time we ever adopted a male cat, too, and we didn't have him for very long. Poor guy.
Yeah.
So then we had the other 2 for quite some time. And then we adopted another 3rd cat from a place where I used to do some freelance work. It was in-house work, and they had a couple of cats, and one of them really was not happy there, but she took a shine to me when I went there. So the person said, "Oh, you want to keep her?" I said, "Yeah, sure." Unfortunately, she's got some serious psychological issues.
Oh no, yeah.
And she's been living with us for, I'd say, 6 years now.
Yeah.
And still gets extremely paranoid and skittish.
There's something about, I don't know if it's just my experience, but female cats seem to have a lot like more personality and more varied personalities. I don't know. Has that been your experience?
Well, I can't really comment because, like I said, I've only had
That's
one.
true.
We've had female cats since I was about 12, 13. And we only had one male cat for a total of 2 months. Although a friend of my wife's, she had a couple of male cats, and they had interesting personalities.
Yeah, that's nice.
They were very large cats too. We'd go visit her, and I'd play with the cats, and we'd come home, and I'd look at ours and think, "Wow, they look like toys."
Yeah. Yeah. Our guy cat is he's probably a third bigger than the female.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Friend in the chat is saying he's got a lot of male cats and they got a lot of personality. So maybe mine's just I think I might have told you this, but we
Indeed.
suspect that our male cat is a ragdoll cat or part ragdoll.
Mm-hmm.
And that means I guess that he just kind of lays around extra. I think it's like a nerve disorder that turns into like something cute that people breed them
Okay.
for, but he's like extra lazy and isn't afraid of things that he should be afraid of, and it's kind of funny.
Nice.
Yeah.
How's my audio anyway?
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Is mine all right? Is it too
Yeah,
close?
you sound perfect.
Yeah. Been using this dumb gaming mic kind of headset, and but I'm like directing the the stupid little thing that comes down for the actual mic part.
The boom.
Sticking it up towards my nose instead of
Oh.
like at my mouth. I think that helps breathe on it.
Oh. I've just got a pair of Samsung earbuds in.
Oh yeah, that'll work.
One of these days I'll have to get myself a more expensive headset.
Yeah, I go back and forth. I bought this it's about $40 a blue Yeti or it's not the Yeti, it's the Snowball. It's like the cheap version.
Oh.
All the cool kids get a blue Yeti. It's like I don't know, I think it's like the $200 version. And
Yeah.
I can tell a difference, but like I go back and I listen to the audio on these, and I think it still sounds fine. So, it's like it's an improvement, but is it one that's worth it? And then I try the Snowball, the $40 thing, and it just sounds the same. And I have more problems because it's like a stationary fixture, and are you gonna you're always like moving in and out close to it. Anyway,
yeah. Last week my audio was not. I didn't think it sounded that great, and I wondered whether it was because it was the same headset I used previously. So I wondered if it had to do with the internet connection.
Mm-hmm. Well, this time I finally figured out, because we're doing on the different account that actually lets me stream. I'm able to do it from internet that is what do you call it? I got the cable plugged into the nice computer, so I think that helps too.
I may have to actually load the... let's see if this doesn't kill the internet.
It's tricky. I think if the person who's hosting it has a decent setup, I think that usually helps everyone. I think you're usually pretty good when it comes to that. That's my understanding, at least.
Okay, cool. So while I have the chat itself playing, or while I've got our video call going in Safari, I've got the YouTube page up on Firefox.
Oh, there you go. Cool. So you can see the chat?
Yes.
That's helpful. Yeah. Yeah, I got my friend Anti-Protons.
Anti-Protons. Hello.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. Just a person I know from the Twitters, the hive of scum and villainy that is the Twitters.
I don't know. I guess it's debatable. What's worse, Twitter or Tumblr?
Well, I mean, does Tumblr exist anymore? I don't even...
I think it only exists in memes at this point.
Oh, I might need to get an account then. I go to Reddit for memes, but oh man, sometimes they're just too much.
See, for the longest time, I just made my own memes.
Yeah, and you're pretty good with that. I remember you sent me a few. It's tricky. Oh, yeah. Brevity is like the key, it seems. But I'm trying to get this hair right.
I don't know how many YouTube followers I have. My channel has pretty much the same name that I'm using in the chat. And the one, there's two videos that my channel is really known for. And the first one is one of those extra normal videos with the robots arguing with each other. It's graphic design student versus teacher.
Nice.
And I did that when I was in my junior year at Ringling. And most of the comments affirmed that it seemed fairly accurate no matter where you went to art school.
Yeah. That's, I don't know if that's reassuring or not. It is funny.
Yeah. And then I'd say the more popular video was the music video I had made of Maddock and Viola's song, Ghost Assassin.
I don't know the song.
Good song. Actually, I originally heard the song while watching one of those parkour compilation videos.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked the song, so I played that part of the video over again. I'm listening to the lyrics, and I'm thinking, there's something about these lyrics. I don't know. Okay, I've got to actually look the song up and see what the lyrics are saying and listen to it. And I found it odd because the video I found in the song, it's picture Viola, but she's cosplaying. I'm like, well, she looks like a ghost from StarCraft. Oh, wait a tick. Then I started paying more attention to the lyrics, and there's lines in there like, "Oh, I can't believe it, Jim. How did you know where to find me?" And I'm like,
"Oh,
hey,
wow.
This is pretty much the Ballad of Sarah Kerrigan set to Liquid D&B."
Oh man. Save
So,
that song.
Oh yeah, it's if you look on my channel, you can see the video that I did of it.
Yeah.
I had posted that on the EDM page.
Oh, did you? Oh. I need to resurrect my interest in that page.
Yeah, I still listen to that stuff in the car on the highway, but I generally listen to other stuff at my desk.
Yeah.
It varies back and forth between the epic stuff and sometimes synthwave, which I guess qualifies as EDM to a point.
Mm-hmm.
And lately I've been listening to like QAnon videos and stuff, and so that's
Nice.
pretty crazy.
Oh, you might want to answer. Antiprotons is asking something in the chat. Don't want to speak for you.
Yes. No. Do I dislike graphic design? Depends on what day you ask.
Yeah.
I mean, it pays the bills. There are times I wish I had stuck more with along, illustration or animation, because the nature of what I do kind of takes me away from that, but it's something I'll get back to eventually.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you really commit to being a graphic designer, particularly when it comes to type and design styles and everything, it changes the way you look at everything fundamentally. I mean, I don't know if you noticed this about me. Like when we were at Cabo's, I can't look at a menu at a restaurant. I'm doing two things. I'm looking for what I want to order. I'm also analyzing the layout of the menu and the type choices and the colors and all that.
Yeah.
And on some subliminal level, I'm thinking, okay, what would I do different? Or, oh, that's cool. How did they do that? And yeah, I like Papyrus from time to time. That was one of many unpopular opinions I had while I was in Ringling.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad I'm no longer in the I guess the general commercial world anymore with illustration, because that was just like seeing like mom and pop shop, little mascots for their stores and hating it and like loving what they're doing in principle, but like hating everything I saw that was small, small business illustration stuff. Just kind of got to me. I was like, I want to like this. I want, I like what you're doing, but and I can't give you my work for free, but please let me help you. And
yeah,
it's a
that I think is that is singularly the most frustrating thing about being a graphic designer. Everybody expects you to do for them on the cheap.
Yeah.
Or free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And most people, yeah, good design is very hard. And you know what makes it even harder? Most people don't know it when they see it.
Yeah.
So most people who are fine with passable pedestrian design that's done super cheap, they're not going to appreciate you saying, well, this is good design, this is professional quality design, it's worth this amount of money. Oh, well, I can go to this 16-year-old kid who's in high school and he'll do it for $5. Okay, you're going to get what you pay for, but you clearly don't know the difference, so have at it.
Yeah.
And that's one reason I don't really freelance much at all anymore.
Yeah.
Oh God, make it pop. That is probably the last thing you want to say to any professional designer, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I used to know someone at their cubicle. They had a some little like editorial illustration thingy of some client walks up to a graphic designer and says, or I guess it was, well, it could be that or an illustrator, and holds up an image that he printed out that has it's literally 4 pixels in a square, and he's like, "Hey, can you just kind of blow this up a bit? Can you Just make it less pixelated. Send it back to me. Like,
yeah, I've had experiences like that.
Yeah.
Or they'll send you oh god, there was this one guy that I did freelance work for, and he was a crook. He never even paid me. He has this one logo that a previous designer had created for this salon or whatever that he was managing the Facebook page for. Very, very complex vector silhouette of some girl with a hairspray can or whatever. And he's like, well, I need you to put this logo on stuff. I'm like, okay, do you have the master file that I can use?
Yeah.
Well, can't you just pull it off Facebook?
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
like, no,
amazing.
I can't. The instance that's on Facebook is tiny, it's pixelated, and it's a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. In my job, I mean, my daily issue is working for non-creative types and having to explain that when something's in, because I do a lot of stuff in 3D for the day job, and I'm not understanding that you have to, you can't just like rotate the illustration, even though like I rendered something out and and I spent a couple days making it really nice. It's got like 50 layers in Photoshop now because I had to do like see-through stuff and other things that aren't 3D, and it's all a big thing. And they're like, "Oh, that looks really nice, but can you just rotate it a little bit?"
Yeah,
so
it's not an actual 3D asset in Maya, if that's what you're thinking.
Yeah, like even if it was just a single image render, the answer is is always no. You have to re-render. Like yeah, it's funny. It's something it's hard to intuit. That I can't fault people for, because I get that you would expect something that's in 3D to instantly, like, you don't understand there's a render aspect to things. Like, you just assume it's in a 3D program. Like, I have Adobe Illustrator open right now, and I can see the file. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to. I can see what the art looks like now. There's not just like a working image that it's temporarily showing me until it figures it out later. But other people, understandably, 3D, that aspect eludes people, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's, well, and any sort of artwork where you have to put time into rendering it, and then people say, oh, can you just, we have a similar, I mean, we have similar cases at my day job. We do a lot of infographics for financial presentations and whatnot. I'll do this column chart with 3 lines across it. It's 30, 40 columns across. And, we send it to our field person, and they'll come back a half hour later. Okay, I just have a couple of minor changes, and we need this back in 20 minutes. And every single value on the chart is different.
Oh, no.
It's like, we do these by hand in InDesign, fellas. It's not automated.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, most people would say, what are you, crazy? Why don't you just use PowerPoint or something? Yeah, we could do that, but then it would look completely bleh. We do it in InDesign, so it looks good.
Yeah, yeah. PowerPoint never ceases to amaze. It's I guess I don't know what the longevity has been, really. I guess the word stuck, like Band-Aid or something, or duct tape. So people just always, they knew the word, and they always found a way. Like, it's like the medium is the message kind of thing. If you know PowerPoint, then you find you think of presentations in terms of PowerPoint, or you think of your I don't know, the content you're generating in terms of PowerPoint. You try to solve the problem in a PowerPoint way, I guess. And that's
in
never
my
gone away
experience,
with.
in my experience, and I'm going to sound like an elitist here, and that's fine.
That's what we're doing. That's fine.
Most people who say, "Oh, I'm a PowerPoint person," they don't actually know the first thing about PowerPoint. They can type in text boxes, and it's like, "Oh, I know PowerPoint." Okay, edit the master slide. Well, where's that? Oh, I thought you knew PowerPoint.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the question. It's like, what do people think PowerPoint is? Because they keep adding features to it over the years, and I think people still use it like it's what it used to be in the, I guess, the late '90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, I dabbled a bit with 3D modeling years back, and then I got out of practice.
Yeah, it's tricky.
So, Matt, I wanted to make you aware of something because I'm looking at the stream on YouTube, and it keeps momentarily going from showing what you're drawing to just a black screen with my icon in the middle.
Yes, and what do you think about that? Because a lot of YouTubers, it sounds so lame saying that. A lot of people are okay with that, and I know you're not displaying content, but you think I should just I could click, just stick it on just my screen? You think that's better?
I mean, if you're fine with it, I'm fine with it. It's a bit jarring if somebody's trying to follow what you're drawing. But
that's a good point. All right, fine. I'll yeah. Well, I wonder about that. I guess if there's more than 2 people here,
I think it would be useful if we did another chat, like with Steven and Serena, and the visual focus wasn't really intended to be the what was going on the screen, like you working on your comic or whatever.
It'd be a lot more occasional that you'd see any one particular person's thing, and
yeah,
that's a good point. Well, I stuck it to sharing screen to everyone, and I think that means it's permanently on mine until I stop it.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I'm glad I preemptively turned off my camera. We don't want to scare people.
Yeah. Well, now you know how to do that with the you don't know. Now it's not like accidentally turning on. You don't want it to, which is probably extra scary.
Yeah, although apparently I was warned. I got this little pop-up when I first came out. I swear it was like using completely different software. It said, "Oh, the chat moderator can turn on and off your camera and microphone."
Are you serious?
I'm like,
I didn't know I had that.
So that's kind of creepy.
I promise I will not be doing that.
I mean, it's nothing a piece of electrical tape wouldn't fix, but
yeah, Antiproton says he keeps his cameras blocked.
That's yep,
smart.
That's a good policy.
Yeah, that's I wonder how I would do that to you. That's pretty funny.
There are several. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. No.
So to go back to something Antiproton said a few minutes ago, I have tried learning Blender several times, and just no.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I've heard difficult things with that. I
mean, the images don't lie. You can do some amazing stuff with it if you know what you're doing, but you gotta getting from having no idea what you're even looking at to knowing what you're doing. I just try as I might, I've just always found it to be too much of a growth pain.
Yeah, it looks like there's a low barrier to entry, but the mountain you have to climb to get something that you want to put in your portfolio is tremendous. Like any 3D program, honestly. So.
Now, at some point, I am going to get my, blow the dust off my Wacom and try that technique Serena talked about with inking.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Of course, at first I need to get a new scanner so I can actually scan in my sketches, because
Yep.
For the past few years, since my scanner broke, I've just been taking pictures of my sketches with my phone, which, for the most part, it's okay, but it would be so much easier and more reliable and more consistent if I could just scan them.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd probably be happier with the. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's just key. Being able to see your content without weird shadows and artifacts.
Yeah, which most of which I can clean up in post in Photoshop anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
just not having to do that eliminates a step.
Yeah, why bother? Yeah. Well, I thought I'd ask you about storytelling.
Yes. Let's actually get on the planned subject.
Hold on, let me tell Antiprotons here. If you tried to put something in the chat, I don't think you can put images in the chat. Just FYI. Yeah. So what do you think? I like the 7 steps I sent you earlier. Comes from a guy who wrote a book that I particularly enjoy because it doesn't talk about telling story in terms of Act 1, Act 2, Act 3.
Let me read over them. It does remind me of the hero's journey arc in a way.
Definitely. Yeah. That's still there. Yeah.
So you have weakness and need, desire, opponent, plan, battle, self-revelation, new equilibrium.
Mm-hmm. It's all the pieces that you recognize. But because he's not telling you when to do them, he's just telling you the order. I don't know. I found that kind of revelatory because then you're not, you're not counting how many pages till you need to do something. That gets a little like he thinks it's like an outside in kind of approach or an outsider's view of what it takes to tell a story. But as a script writer, in his experience at least, he thinks that just sticking to the components of story rather than the timing or how you build that architecture is a better way to go about it. You get a more organic result.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm actually following this formula myself. I mean, there's certain components definitely there, although I don't know if I actually start out with weakness and need per se.
I'll bring it up for myself. So just to explain where he's going with that, so it's John Truby is the person that I guess he's like a story doctor type person. He says most people want to go straight to desire, and desire is what the character is conscious of. Like that's what's they decide to do with the story. Like what their conscious motivating factor is. Most people start with that, but the reason he says I was trying to read it a bit before the stream. The reason he says you need to quote unquote kind of start with weakness and need, and again, this is why it's like it's a structure that isn't it's not built on Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. It's built on just do these things in this order eventually. So the reason why he puts weakness and need first is because that needs to be present before the story begins, I guess. And then the desire can come in. Obviously, it'll end up being in Act 1, but you need to introduce the character first, and that character needs to have a moral and or psychological problem. So like a personal issue that also has societal effect, like maybe they mistreat others because of their psychological weakness, which is the moral component, and they have a need to get that fixed, I guess. But they don't know what their need is. They know what their desire is, but they don't know their need. So, and then there's someone else, the opponent, and that can, in a romantic comedy, that could be a just the love interest, and so it's pretty open. It's not like the villain per se, but someone who has the same need, or no, sorry, different need, the same desire. They're both competing for the same goal, and they also have a weakness and need, I guess. So they have a flaw, and then they have something that would fix that flaw that they don't understand or realize, and then they're battling it out through the plan, and then the battle, of course, more directly than the character. And this is just me. I'm just riffing off of. This isn't like me saying this is gospel. This is just me trying to articulate what this guy's ideas, at least, and we can pick it apart if we feel the need. But so self-revelation is when the main character realizes the because the desire brought them to this revelation of their weakness and need. They realize whether they get the thing that they were desiring or not. They realize what their weakness is, and either they succeed in getting the need to solve the weakness, or they fail. They just realize what their weakness is, but then they don't get the need in a tragedy, and then you've got the new equilibrium of how that plays out. So I think it's all the things you already understand. I think weakness is need is the only thing that sticks out to me when I first came into this approach.
Well, in retrospect, the way you explained it, I would say with the characters I've introduced so far, I have done that to a point.
Yeah, you probably have. Yeah.
You inherently introduce any weakness and need they have, which can be followed up by desire in examining their personality.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you write a Mary Sue and they're perfect.
Well, that's that's one of the issues. I guess you can confuse weakness and need with desire, and you can think, I just really want to know who my parents are. That's their weakness or something, or their need. Really, that's just a desire. That's something that they've articulated. That's a goal that can practically be, played out in the world. And if that's the only thing that's considered a weakness, that's not a well-written character.
Yeah, no.
IMO. Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. One of the things I like about this is that it's forced me to make sure that every character has a like something that I could put down in a sentence, like clearly defined, a problem that they aren't aware of, but the audience is. It gets addressed over the course of the story, and I can keep that distinct in my mind between the problem that the character themselves is trying to fix, until those things slowly merge by the story's end. And in trying to fix the problem that they thought they were fixing, they're going to fix the problem that the audience knows that they need to have fixed. So that's just kind of how I've been using this, at least as a tool to remind myself of that. What do you think about the story? Do you have anything as concrete as this that you think about when it comes to this? Yeah, big question.
I guess I've been focused less on directional structure and more just how the characters are developing. I have a basic idea for a plot in mind, key events that I want to happen. Call them key frames, if you will, and then filling in the blanks of sequences in between and deciding, okay, how do I want to develop these characters? How much do I want to reveal? How much of the mystery behind the story itself do I want to reveal, and in what order? And do I want to do the trick where a character has a lot of stuff revealed to them, but the audience is not made privy to it, which is going to be frustrating because up until now they've kind of seen everything through that character's eyes, but now something that character is seeing is being hidden from them? Or for consistency, do I keep that character in the dark until I'm ready for the audience to know the truth?
Yeah. Well, I think of those things, when it comes to that, I think of what stories do I find more satisfying, Like when am I more pleased, like walking out of a theater or putting a book down? I tend to go with the latter, but how about you?
I don't know. I mean, it can be interesting where you're following a character and they've here's a good example. This just popped into my head. Have you ever seen Rules of Engagement with Samuel Jackson and Tommy Lee Jones?
No, I haven't. I probably would like it. I've heard
you
about
probably
it.
would. It's a good portion of it is set in the Middle East.
Oh, really? Oh.
Well, at least the key events near the beginning of the movie.
Oh, cool.
So, well, I don't really want to give away any spoilers, but there is a very crucial event in the beginning of the movie that sets the tone for the rest of it, where Samuel Jackson's character, he's a Marine. I forget if he's like a captain or a major or whatever, and he's supposed to extract this diplomat and his family from this embassy somewhere in the Middle East. I forget where, and it's under fire from terrorist snipers. But there's also a quote unquote peaceful protest organized outside the embassy. Although you're getting the hint that apart from the snipers on the rooftops with their AKs, there's more to this protest than they're saying. It doesn't seem quite so peaceful. And at one point, at one point, Samuel Jackson, because his men are taking fire, and at one point the camera focuses on him, and he looks. You're seeing a close up of him looking out over the crowd, the supposedly peaceful crowd, and he just looks. It's a look of horror. It's a look of incredulity. It's a look of anger. And then suddenly he orders his men to fire on the crowd.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, but there's women and children down there. And he's, so like 83 people end up getting killed.
Oh, wow.
And then the bulk of the movie is the investigations that go into.
Oh, I remember hearing about this. Yes.
Did he act wrongly?
Yeah.
Or, so, and of course, there's all about, evidence being willfully destroyed, falsified, falsified testimony, all sorts of stuff. And, obviously the real truth, the audience is made aware of it, and you see much later in the movie
what really happened,
what he saw. I mean, first you see a videotape of it right before the crooked politician who wants to destroy him destroys the tape.
Oh, interesting.
You know, while claiming that the tape was inconclusive. So, you know, but you know, that's a critical piece of evidence that is kept out of the trial that would have completely exonerated him.
Mm.
But then you even see a more detailed vision of what he saw in his own memories. But so it's one of those things where, and I've seen this done in, you know, I read a lot of Brad Thor's books back in the day, and you would oftentimes have something like that happen there, where you were following a character, and then the character would see something, and the book would tell you how they reacted. Like it made their blood run cold, or you know, it took their breath away, it shocked them. And it's enough to horrify you, to mystify you, to titillate you, but they don't tell you what it is until later on in the book. So up until that point, you're left wondering what it was.
Oh, that's great.
Was such a crucial change for them. And I'm like, you know, I kind of like the idea of, you know, yeah, it does involve breaking the consistency of, you know, you're seeing everything the character's seeing, but then again, you don't always see everything the character sees in movies. Sometimes they show you the character sees something, but and you know it's impactful, but you're not shown what it is until later.
Yeah, and even the character isn't always sure. There's always there's so many stories, like there's a Kurosawa movie, I think, called what's it called, Rashomon or something, about an event that happens, and there's four different characters who tell four different versions of the same event. One of those, like, playing off of you know, what is perspective, what is how does a person, an individual, experience a story, and what do they bring in to the event that you know, helps shape their experience of that event. I always think those, I mean, it does kind of, sometimes it plays into like a moral ambiguity kind of component, but other times it's really just like Rashomon is just well, I guess it is kind of playing with moral ambiguity. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it is interesting, and I do kind of like that too, because for those reasons, I guess. Just I'm rambling at this point, but
yeah, moral ambiguity can be interesting depending on how it's done.
Moral, I guess sometimes people say moral ambiguity. I think they mean moral complexity. You know what I mean? That's something I wonder about.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm trying to do to, yeah. Now, see, to touch on what Antiprotons just said.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I've got a character who a lot of people are going to see him as a bad guy, you know, even though he's supposed to be one of the good guys. I mean, they'll obviously cite a lot of character flaws in him, but you know, he's got his own justification for it.
Yeah, they have to be an understandable villain, a comprehensible one, I guess, even if not an excusable one. But
yeah, depending on how much of I mean, obviously the character I'm referring to is Dash. Depending on how much you recall of I think chapter 5, so you begin to get a glimpse into why he is the way he is.
Yeah, which I like. He was entirely understandable, comprehensible, I guess.
And then, of course, in the chapter, you know, not long after that, you know, you're back following him around, and you know, it's like you first see him in the prologue, and okay, this guy's got a real attitude. He's got a chip on his shoulder, whatever. Doesn't really seem to like these people in this region. Why? And now when you go into the next chapter with him, you have more information.
Wasn't it even kind of didn't you kind of explain it a bit in the cards scene?
It came after that. I mean, that was chapter 5. That was after the conclusion of the card game.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. 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 I've heard someone once say that the villain is the most important character in the story, and I kind of like that. I think that's probably a pretty true statement. Because even though you've got the protagonists and they're the character that you're identifying with the most, in a way you're supposed to identify with the antagonist and then understand that's where you get your moral, your complex moral conclusions from. You see, I guess, like the shadow version of the protagonist, or the I just saw Enter the Spider-Verse last weekend, and there's like every character is dealing with some kind of person who's closest to them kind of loss, whether it's middle age, spoilers, but it's not really spoilers, but it's kind of early on. But middle-aged Spider-Man kind of having his marriage with Mary Jane fall apart, and so he's kind of lost her because he kind of pulled back because he didn't want to have kids. Or Miles Morales, the protagonist, kind of feeling alienated and distanced from his father, so he gravitates to his uncle as a father figure, or pretty much everyone else has someone else dead in their life. And the main villain, what's his name? The Daredevil villain guy, Kingpin or whatever. He's his wife and son are dead, and he's trying everything he can to bring them back by playing with parallel universes. And we already talked. I just realized we already talked about this over lunch, but
yep.
Yeah, sorry. Very nice of you for not telling me, but
to be honest, it actually slipped my mind at first. I knew we talked about the Spider-Verse, but I had forgotten about the I didn't remember you saying the villain was Kingpin.
Yeah, I couldn't remember his name at the moment, probably, but yeah. So it's just kind of neat because you see Frisk or Fisk or however you say his name going after pretty much the same desire that and there's like 6 heroes in that story. It's kind of too many, but they're all going after the same. What do I do with this loss? Can I mend that fence? Is it even possible? With a lot of these people, the people that they love the most are dead. What do I do with that? And Fisk is saying, I'm gonna burn the world if it means I can get my wife and son back. Like I'm willing to do that. And everyone else has to realize that it's gonna take sacrifice and but not doing that is more heroic, I guess.
See, that was a lot like Malcolm McDowell's character in Star Trek Generations.
Yeah, see, Star Trek is a blank spot to me. Growing up, I think I bought into the myth that you either have to be a Star Wars fan or a Star Trek fan. So I didn't really explore it, but I like it from a distance.
I seem to recall having that same conversation with a mutual acquaintance of ours.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
I'll give you 3 guesses. Who?
Uh, she a gamer?
Might be.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure she has some strong opinions about Star Trek.
Oh, I was actually trying to explain. You don't have to. You don't have to. Disavow yourself from Star Wars to like Star Trek. I mean,
Yeah,
both are good for different reasons. It's
yeah,
also the Star Trek universe is very diverse because you've
yeah,
got a whole bunch of different TV shows and movies spanning, multiple generations.
yeah, yeah. And they all have their own kind of feel and flavor, which is nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's something that Star Wars has been trying to do recently. And I think they've been doing okay with that. But obviously, they've done a lot less successfully with it than Star Trek has. Yes. So.
Yeah, I feel like, well, I, I would, I would say both Star Trek and Star Wars recently, they got a little bit too iconoclastic. It's like,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
oh, we're
I'd
gonna,
agree with that.
we're not just gonna remake it for a whole new generation. We're gonna shit can everything that came before, and in case somebody might not get the point, we're gonna give this completely ham-fisted line to
Oh my
the
gosh.
weepy villain in the new Star Wars. Oh, let the past die. Kill it if you have to. Oh,
Yeah.
geez, is that what we're doing here? I didn't know that.
I will say,
Thank you, Captain Obvious.
I think okay, so that was the villain's message, right? Okay, this I give that movie a 3 out of 5. I didn't find it particularly. So this isn't like me being like a apologist for that film per se, but I think the message, in fairness, was something more like that. So that is the villain saying it. The message was leave some parts of the past behind and keep the good stuff. Now, what the good stuff is, I think the movie was a little confused about, but it wanted to present a morally complex message at the end. It just, but what it actually gave us seemed a lot more like let the past die and leave it at that for sure.
I have, as a whole, so many issues with the new movies, and I mean, for a number of reasons. And I mean, we could devote an entire couple of streams to that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the
At
reason
at the
why,
same time, and I've said this to people for years with Jurassic Park. I don't look at the original trilogy with, nostalgia goggles of perfection. I realize those, the original trilogy had its flaws.
yeah,
You know, people, you know, it's kind of funny because it's the fanboyism that has begun with the new movies. It's kind of created a love it or hate it atmosphere that works both ways.
yeah,
Because you've got a lot of
very
people that
true.
are, and in a way, this goes back to when the prequels came out, and you had a lot of people who, at the time, they're like, "Oh no, well, I like real Star Wars, and these prequels aren't Star Wars." It's like, well, George Lucas thinks they are, so that's got to count for something.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like, so some people would say to me, "Well, you were willing to put up with the prequels. Were they really so much? Were they really so much better?" For a couple of reasons, yes. One, they weren't just the same movies over again with new faces and
yeah.
regurgitated
It wasn't a
motifs and
reset.
scenarios.
Yeah,
And at the same time, it came directly from Lucas. I was more willing to accept it that it
yeah,
came from Lucas as opposed to, somebody who, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of Abrams' work in that particular genre. He makes great action scenes, no question about that.
oh
But
sure.
I I did not like what he did with Star Trek. It's like they handed him
Yeah.
Star Trek. Oh, we got to create this alternate universe where Vulcan gets destroyed. By the way, the Romulans now look like American History X.
Yeah.
The Klingons look like the Uruk-hai from Lord of the Rings for some reason. And it's like, and there were things about Star Trek that I thought were good. I liked the way they worked in both Christopher Pike and James Kirk, and how Christopher Pike was like Kirk's mentor.
Yeah.
But like there were other things where it's like, dude, you're just showing no respect to everything that came before. And then, of course, you come to find out Abrams wasn't even really all that familiar with Star Trek.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, and it's the same token with Star Wars. He might have been more familiar with Star Wars, oh God, who did the analysis? Who was that one guy?
Yeah, so
he's extremely long-winded. He's a YouTuber called Mahler.
Oh yeah, I was hoping you were going to say him.
He's got some really good analysis.
Yeah, really good takes.
I was watching his, 5.5 hour long intro of the
insane.
critique of Force Awakens. And I'm thinking to myself,
an epic.
He's making some excellent points here. So, I mean, very subtle stuff that I didn't even think of. I mean, in the first place, the title crawl, when you really think about it, it's horrible. There is this 30-year gap where all this stuff supposedly happened.
Yeah.
And you're just expected to, I don't know, read books, go to websites, whatever. I mean, the movies, the original trilogy and even the prequels, they never put that burden of expectation on people.
Yeah. Well, good movies never do, And yet at the same time, it was a soft reset, because it's a how can we let's assume that the fan base is mostly dead or moved on because of the prequels. So how can we recreate the original trilogy from the 80s, somehow bring back middle-aged fans, but give new, kids the same kind of content, I guess. But with some weird convoluted excuse as to why this has to be the same, A New Hope, but with the new veneer on it.
I mean, from just to touch on a couple of things briefly. The original Death Star, which ostensibly took 20 plus years to build, could fit inside the barrel of the fucking gun on Starkiller Base.
Yeah.
I mean, laying aside the amount of manpower and resources, I mean, we have to quote Joe from Family Guy. How can you afford these things?
Yeah, it just makes the stakes. There's no stakes because they can just show up and just like, and it was confirmed in The Last Jedi when it seemed like Force Awakens, they blew up everything that was big that the First Order had, and then suddenly they have, a giant fleet like minutes later, because I guess the movie starts like immediately after the end of The Last Jedi. I mean, The Force Awakens.
Well,
Can't even get their names right because I don't like.
Well, this is what I call, and if you remember, like, let me qualify this. I call it taking a Michael Bay to something.
Yeah.
And let me explain what I mean by that.
Yeah, please.
You remember when Armageddon came out, which was about 5 minutes after Deep Impact came out back in the 90s?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And honestly, if you line those two trailers up side by side, it felt like two kids arguing over who had the bigger pretend hero, villain, whatever action figure in their hands.
Yeah.
And Deep Impact, that kid was, trying to make sense, and it's like whatever he said. Then over here we have Michael Bay with Armageddon saying something 10 times more extreme, 10 times more gratuitous, and 10 times less believable.
Very well said. Yeah.
It's like Deep Impact. Oh, there's a 6-mile wide comet. It's months away from impact with Earth. A team of highly trained astronauts is going to take this experimental spaceship and go meet the comet. And okay, they have these nuclear devices that drill to a depth of 1 mile apiece. 4 of them detonate, and they only succeed in breaking off a chunk of the comet. And then finally, spoiler warning, they managed to destroy the larger piece of the comet by doing a suicide run inside the gap, and blowing it up from the inside. Yeah. Armageddon. We got this big ass asteroid, and it looks like a giant piece of rock candy. It doesn't even look like an actual asteroid. It looks like a space sea urchin, and it growls because asteroids do that. And here it is. And by the way, it's 18 days away. We didn't see that.
Yeah.
And oh, well, what do? We don't have any of those. We don't have any of those auto drilling nukes that go to 1 mile apiece. No, we got to bring in a bunch of a complete, 90s comedy clown act that's never set foot on a spaceship before, so they can do oil drilling on an asteroid.
Yeah.
And this thing's, oh, by the way, this asteroid, it's the size of Texas. Yeah, you thought New York City was bad? Our asteroid's the size of Texas, baby.
You're making me want to watch both of these over again.
You really should. I mean, watch the trailer for Deep Impact first, then watch the trailer for Armageddon. And if you don't think Armageddon seems like a cartoon in comparison. But I will say this, Hans Zimmer composed some very brilliant music, and that helps to get through it.
And Armageddon's the one that I think has stood the test of time in cultural memory. I don't know if it stands up in actually watching it, but
it got a lot more hype because you had Bruce Willis, you had Ben Affleck, you had Liv Tyler. I mean, the movie was a 2-hour commercial for Aerosmith. Let's be honest.
You had Aerosmith. Yeah, they nailed it with the soundtrack.
I mean, I'll be honest. I liked Hans Zimmer's music. I could have done without Aerosmith's song. People can light their torches and sharpen their pitchforks. I don't care. I've always been very picky when it comes to pop music, but then they get up there, and this is the most ridiculous part in the entire movie. We're going to split this asteroid, this size of Texas asteroid, in half by drilling to a depth of what? 10 miles? No, you're fine. What, 5 miles? No, dude, no. 1 mile, 800 feet. You're kidding, right? That's like not even a sixth of a mile.
Yeah.
And when they detonate this one nuke, and the thing must have been like one of those cold fusion warheads from the second Independence Day movie, because it blows up, and suddenly you see this phenomenal explosion take place right at the center of the asteroid. I'm like, dang. I mean, was that did they find a small thermal exhaust port that led straight to the reactor system or something?
Yeah, Antiprotons makes a good point. You could just nudge it. Maybe if it's 18 days away, maybe it's too late for that. But economically speaking, why not just make it, head off into the sun instead of. But then you wouldn't have. I mean, you need an explosion at the end of a blockbuster movie. I mean, what kind of writing is that if you don't end it?
And of course, in pure Michael Bay fashion, it has to come down to the last second.
Yeah, or Star Wars for that matter. I guess Star Wars taught us that we have to have a giant sphere explode at the end, or you don't have a sequel movie. You don't have a J.J. Abrams movie. You don't have a Michael Bay movie.
See, everybody, all the classic all your 30 and 40 something classic trilogy fans say Empire is the greatest movie and Return of the Jedi is stupid because it's a 2-hour commercial for kids' toys. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
you're wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, you can think that. I mean, that's your opinion. Here's mine. Empire is dark and depressing. Return of the Jedi is awesome. It's like, dude, you think the Ewoks are awesome? No, I think the Ewoks are stupid, but I think the speeder bike chase is awesome. I think the Battle of Endor in space is awesome. I think flying through the Death Star is awesome. You're going to throw all that out the window because of some teddy bears?
Yeah, that's a great point. I feel like it's one of those Berenstain Bears moments where people forgot that they grew up enjoying Return of the Jedi, and I think they saw some like early viral video in 2002 or something that told them that they didn't like it because of the the stuff that they weren't aware of when they were kids.
I will
Yeah.
I will for the most part agree with Anti-Protons. Rogue One, for me, it definitely ranks up there.
Yeah, wasn't it fun? I thought it was a lot of fun, and it felt original. It wasn't a retelling of something we've already seen.
In terms of fan service and overall believability, and if you're gonna take creative license with established stuff, and I said this back then when I watched, I said Rogue One was the movie that The Force Awakens should have been.
Yeah. To be honest, yeah. If you started off with that, I feel like people would have liked it even more. Yeah.
I mean, to the point where a lot of people said, "Oh, they had to keep pushing the SJW envelope with the rainbow cast." I'm like, "Oh, okay. You know what? I'm gonna admit this. I actually like the characters so much I didn't even notice that." See,
because they're all so different and interesting and unique.
But see, here's the thing. If you make the characters not suck, even people who notice that sort of stuff are not typically going to complain about it.
Yeah. Everyone wins. Everyone wins. Yeah.
I don't complain about Finn because he's black. I complain about Finn because he's by and large pathetic.
Yeah.
Which in a way is more of a disservice.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, we have this black guy and he's the main character. Yeah, but you made him a kind of a simpering loser. It's like how does that help?
Well, and like in Force Awakens, I think he was my favorite character. I think he had he was going in great directions, I guess, in his arc. And then for some reason in The Last Jedi, they felt like he was flying too close to the sun almost, maybe. Like, I don't know what it was.
I don't know. My favorite character in Force Awakens was Poe.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, if I had seen more of him, maybe. Yeah.
And then they completely just ruined him in The Last Jedi. But, I mean, they pretty much ruined everything in The Last Jedi, including, all theory of interstellar battle mechanics. You can just hyperspace 9/11 into things? Oh, why didn't we do that before?
I was talking to someone the other day about this. I feel like, okay, this is my best defense, and this is just me just thinking aloud. This is my best defense of that scenario. If it had been partially successful, I think we would have bought it. Because then we'd say, okay, this doesn't always work, and even at the best and most desperate of times, it only kind of works, but not really. So that's why they don't do it all the time. But it was such a complete, incredible success, and yet somehow and then but it didn't matter anyway, because if I remember right, I've only seen the movie once. That's how much I liked it.
Same here.
They went down and had an orderly ground assault the following scene, so it didn't do anything. Didn't matter. So you could have cut that entire scene out, and it wouldn't, But the fact that it was so successful it does kind of break canon, because then you think, well, now I need to see it more. But if it had just been a partial success, it'd be okay. That's my best defense I can give.
Now at this point, anybody watching this video is either agreeing with my assessment of The Last Jedi, or they're hating me for it. And I'm going to turn that on its head with the next thing I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
The one part of the movie that I really didn't mind, that a lot of people who hated it seemed to mind the most, was the scene at Gold Saucer, is what I'm going to call it. You know, everybody calls it Space Monte Carlo, Space Vegas. No, it was Gold Saucer, and those things were four-legged chocobos. You heard it here.
Yeah. Is that why you liked it? For its Final Fantasy?
No. Well, yes.
Yeah, yes. That's fair.
To quote Bilbo Baggins, yes, but that's not the point. No.
That's funny that you liked it.
What I liked about it,
yeah,
you know, of course, this is an attack on capitalism. No, it's really pointing out the nature of the military-industrial complex and how most wars that are fought, both sides are financed by the same people. And they're the ones laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
And
that's the saddest part, is that we've entrenched ourselves on either side of an imaginary line that the movie, I agree with you, that the movie didn't really draw. It was a military industrial complex idea. It wasn't a capitalism versus socialism idea or something.
I mean, granted, if you've got, granted, that in and of itself does raise a lot more continuity questions with how the First Order got all their ordnance. It's like, the First Order is buying their stuff from these wealthy gamblers in the Gold Saucer.
Yeah.
Well, where the did they get the bank to have all? I mean, the Executor class Star Destroyers were one thing. This huge flying wing, I don't even remember what it was called. I mean, now, according to what somebody read, and I forget whether this was Mahler or whoever, apparently that was the mobile fortress for the entire First Order, which was how they were able to keep it secret. And I'm like, okay, let's say I buy that. How did you build the thing?
Yeah, why do they have so much money and they can't build their own weaponry? You know? Yeah, why do they even have to go to Space Casino Land? You know?
The one part that doesn't, and this was the disconnect for me. And this was, Mahler talked about this extensively, and I think this is what bothered me the most about Force Awakens. You can lay aside what a Mary Sue Ray is. You can lay aside what a, arm flailing vaudeville era scaredy cat Flynn is.
Yeah.
You can lay aside a lot. What you can't lay aside is the fact that we're supposed to be past the era of the Empire, where the New Republic is the one holding the cards.
Yeah.
Why don't they have this massive space fleet to defend against any remnants of the Empire that would try to regather and grab power? And why is the First Order, this fledgling organization, more powerful in terms of size and military might than the Empire after 30 years of unchallenged dominance? And that was after appropriating all the resources of the Old Republic. The First Order just dwarfs them in terms of what they have and what they can do.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, what does the New Republic have? They have a bunch of X-Wings and fewer ships than there were at the Battle of Endor.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with this picture.
Well, because it's a soft reset, and they decided that first, and then they came up with a script to excuse it. And ironically, they should have what you're describing, like what you're implying that they should have done, would actually have looked a lot more like the prequels. And I really don't think people would have a problem with that. The quote unquote good guys seem to be on top, and then you have the slow descent and I guess like the crumbling of this new golden age they built, where everything seems fine, and then it slowly kind of turns into a bad place again. that would be kind of cool, I think.
I mean, that would have made more sense. I mean, I see what Anti-Protons is saying. The New Republic was anti-war.
Yeah.
And that.
Like,
I mean,
it was in one of the books, but that's not an
again,
excuse.
Expecting people to read books to understand what they're looking at in a movie.
And how interesting is that in a book anyway? Like, let's read about a diplomat deciding that we're gonna scale down all weaponry, all ordnance, even though there's a threat. And I don't know. I knew a couple people that read the book and they said it wasn't very interesting. Just their opinion.
I mean,
but
it's interesting the way they try to explain all of it, but ultimately, it rather, I feel like the way it was done was rather than, let's create a world that makes sense and put a story, tell a story about that world. We're gonna take a story, and what we're gonna basically do is make a new Hope, and they're just gonna have to then twist and skew the world around that story so that it somehow is justifiable.
Yeah, and that's just bring it back to George Lucas. I think that's the difference between a historically very successful corporation running things and an eccentric billionaire who's the creator founder and is making this stuff. He's bankrolling it with basically the most expensive indie films ever created, and just doing things because he feels like that's the right thing to do, even if it's Jar Jar Binks, even it's all, but it's coming out of his crazy eccentric head. And that's why I still like I went back and watched them a couple months ago, and I was actually kind of, I mean, granted, I watched a fan edit version, but like, it was just kind of pleasant seeing how eccentric they were, because like, there's no, like, if it was a boardroom of suits deciding how this story would go, they would never let at least half the stuff that you see in the prequels fly in terms of visuals or plot, even if it's chunky. Like, it all feels genuine, it all feels like earnesty is the yeah, it all feels earnest. And I think a lot of the sequels, they go in and out of being earnest. They have their moments. They all have their moments, but that's just hard to do. I don't know how you fix that, because this Star Trek has the same issue right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how you fix that, because that's that larger issue of movies having to be more and more expensive to draw in a global audience that expect insane visuals and stuff they've literally never seen before.
And I'll give credit where it's due. The visuals in the new films are amazing. I enjoy the space battles. I enjoy the action sequences.
Yeah.
Well, mostly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Those little sand skiffs or whatever they were, going over the salt flats towards the knuckle dragger AT-ATs.
Yeah.
As a retelling of the Battle of Hoth. I was like, no, just no.
Yeah. Well, it subverted your expectations, didn't it? Because you thought you were going to get an interesting battle, and instead you just got them decimated within seconds.
I mean, the only thing missing from that scene was young Annie in one of those things saying, "Now this is pod racing."
Yeah.
Which I think for some people would have been preferable to Rose crashing into Finn and preventing him from character development. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then another point made is just like the general tone that movie ends with. You've been decimated from hundreds to thousands of people to a dozen and one ship.
Yeah.
And you're all happy. It's like, despite, you know, when you finally see the Alliance fleet at the end of Empire Strikes Back, and you realize, oh, the Rebel Alliance actually has more ships. You know, you see the Mon Calamari ships for the first time, and you're like, oh, okay, they're not that screwed. They might have a fighting chance with some of these ships. But you know, even so, there's still a somewhat somber a tone about all of it. You know, Luke is dealing with the loss of his hand. He's still trying to come to terms with, you know, realizing that, you know, or the, you know, the revelation that, you know, Darth Vader was his father. And, you know, then of course, you know, got Chewie and Lando going off with the Falcon. But
not knowing if we'll ever see him, and
Okay, so I'm gonna do a right turn, Clyde, into what Antiprotons just said. Running out of gas.
Yeah.
Yes.
How exciting is that?
This sort of thing was mentioned once before in Phantom Menace, and all it said was, "There's not enough power to get us to Alderaan."
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
And then Qui-Gon says, or no, actually, it wasn't, you know, it was Qui-Gon. He says, we'll have to find a place to refuel and repair the ship. It doesn't say anything, it doesn't really say much about fuel, so much as it seemed like they took, well, it seemed like they took damage while running the Federation blockade. And that was the problem.
Yeah. It's clearly well, they wanted again, because it's a like, how do we pantomime Empire Strikes Back without doing any of it, you know, while doing everything worse than Empire Strikes Back did?
You know what actually makes more sense? I watched one video that I don't remember who it was or where it was. I wish I had saved it because it was brilliantly done. The new Star Wars films make a lot more sense compared to Spaceballs than Star Wars.
Yeah. But you're saying Spaceballs makes more sense?
No. I'm saying if you look at the new films as taking inspiration from Spaceballs rather than Star Wars, it makes more sense.
Okay. Yeah, because it's like, oh, you remember this thing? We can reference it.
Yeah, I mean, General Hux is as ridiculous as Colonel Sanders. General Hux is Colonel Sanders, more or less.
Yeah.
Kylo Ren is Dark Helmet. He doesn't need the helmet. It's just for show.
Yeah. Good point.
And
I mean, they literally had the I don't know if you remember this, but the it looks like a ship is coming down. There's all this steam, and then it turns out it's a ironing board in a clothes iron kind of thing coming down and steaming some officers. Suit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Snoke, aka Darth Smeagol.
Yeah. Oh, hold on, I'll be right back. Yeah. It just doesn't have the I think if they were willing, which is so weird because I think Rogue One is comfortable going where I'm about to say they should be going with these sequels, but they're afraid. I feel like they're afraid to show evil, I guess, for very long in these sequels. For some reason, they're trying to go for a wider audience than the other movies.
Well, unless, of course, the evil that we're showing is toxic masculinity.
I don't... Did they have any of that? Do they have any of that in the sequels?
pretty much the First Order.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, well, we can agree that's pretty, if we're going to use the term toxic, I guess that's fairly toxic.
Well, when I use it, I use it sarcastically, but also Poe's character in the second movie. It's like, oh, a competent white male? No, can't have that. Got to make him a pathetic loser who makes things worse, which wouldn't have happened if, you know, Dr. Sadler would have just told us what the plan was.
Yeah, see, anti-protons makes a good point, and this is where I feel like the story, maybe not showing evil is not the best way to put it, but I think that they diversify. Like, there's a lot of women. There's all kinds of races represented in the First Order, and the even at the very top, the officer class doesn't seem scary, I guess. You know, maybe a little mentally unhinged, but not scary. So I don't know why. Maybe to sell again, like maybe this is to sell more toys so that kids wouldn't care whether or not they got First Order troopers or rebel,
Yeah, I don't know.
stuff for Christmas. But
I mean, on the subject of characters for selling toys, and Anti-Proton says the First Order had women. Let's talk about perhaps the most prestigious woman in the First Order, and also the most pointless.
Yeah,
Captain Phasma.
Yeah,
it's like, we're going to make a big deal out of casting the chick from Game of Thrones, and you're never going to know it because she never takes her helmet off.
Yeah, and she never really fights.
She's never going to do much of anything other than just complicitly go along with sabotaging the space station she's on. And then she's going to lose a fight to a janitor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anti-protons, that's a good point. I mean, it's part of, like, more inclusion in stories is showing female villains. I guess the key is, are you going to do it well, or are you just going to hype her up and then make her a joke? Which is what they did.
That's the thing. I mean, there are good female villains like Xenia in Goldeneye.
We've had them for decades.
Funkin Johnson's character, she was an amazing female villain.
Yeah, there's nothing new. Like, we figured this out in the 80s, I feel like. But
I think that's one thing that bugs me about these new movies where it's like, oh yeah, we're showing a strong female character that's never been done before. Did you see Princess Leia in the original trilogy? Like, seriously?
Yeah.
It's like she wasn't content to just be rescued by Han and Luke. She grabs Luke's blaster rifle out of his hands and starts shooting it herself.
She does things that I think Disney would be afraid to do. They'd be like, "Oh, that's a little on the nose, isn't it?" Like, yeah, she's the anti. She establishes a trope and then she completely 180s it, which is part of the entertainment of the whole franchise.
And going back to that part of the universe, I don't know if you ever read the book Shadows of the Empire that the Nintendo 64 game was based around.
Yeah.
That was a fun book, and you actually got into a lot of details about what Leia was doing disguised as the bounty hunter Bosch, trying to ultimately trying to get information about Han, but prior to that, infiltrating Shizor's crime syndicate.
Yeah, I read that like a decade ago or so.
Yeah.
And I did enjoy it. Of course, I played the video game a ton.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, who didn't?
Good. Yeah. Yeah, what a weird, and I guess I mean, who would think to put to make a soundtrack for a book, It was weird, which I found out only a few years ago. Did you know that they put out like a CD of original orchestrated score to the book.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, that might be something to listen to at work tomorrow. It's pretty decent. There's like a waltz for Leia and Shizor. Like, it's weird, but it's good.
Yes.
And apparently the composer was handpicked by John Williams, and
Nice.
I guess it was an attempt to test, like, a friend of mine, like a Star Wars friend of mine pointed out, I guess it was right before, I think it was after the special edition and before the prequels, the first prequel, and they were trying to figure out, like, are people ready for, like, an all-inclusive package kind of thing? Like, are they ready for more than just, an expanded universe book or two and trading cards? Like, if we throw them, like, a music, video game, like, the whole kind of thing, will they track with us? And it did well.
I think another thing that turned me off to the direction they took with the sequels, or the millennial trilogy, I'll call it, is because years back I read Darksaber, which takes place 6 years after the Battle of Endor.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Seemed like a really good direction to take things in after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way they wrote Luke, the way they wrote his entire character, everything that happened with him, with Han, with Leia, it just seemed like such a missed opportunity, or a whole host of missed opportunities.
Yeah.
And
people just, they don't need to see, they don't have to see, like, oh, isn't this cool? The story starting on a desert planet and someone's being called on a mission to by an old person to get on this ship to go say, like, they don't need to see, like, stuff they've already seen before to like, you don't have to tell them that they like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, like, oh, we already know you like this other movie, so we're going to give you that movie again to let you know that it's okay to like this movie too.
And the thing is,
places.
This was Mahler's complaint, and mine as well. If you want to try to recreate A New Hope, maybe don't try to force it so hard. I mean, it made sense when Vader came aboard Leia's Corvette that she knew, or rather Captain Antilles' Corvette, that he knew they had the plans, because they were tracking the transmission. Whereas, and Mahler points this out, when Kylo comes into this settlement, and he confronts the old guy whose name I don't remember, he just says, "Where's the map?
Matter.
We know you have it."
Yeah.
It's like, oh really? How do you know? Could we get a little more information here?
Yeah, even that was I didn't even. That makes me dislike that movie even more. Even that was stolen from A New Hope.
Well,
but made worse.
That's something as a writer that I take particular exception to, because it's like, all right, I'm not even a professional writer yet, and I try to go out of my way to make sure that when I write a scene or I write dialogue, the characters aren't just saying canned, cliched action movie lines to move the plot from point A to point B. Everything the character says not only does it have to make sense within the context of their character, what they're saying, what they're doing, it has to make sense within the context of the microcosm and every concentric level of universe around them. What do they know? What do they not know?
Yeah.
And how do they know this? Where did this information come from? And that's why I get fairly obsessive when it comes to world building, because if you want to make sure you don't fall into that trap, it never hurts to overbuild the world behind the characters.
Well, and this plays into what I harp on about, at least with the stories that I like, is having a sense of the I guess the moral heartbeat of the story you're trying to tell. Having a clear, it's not just a sequence of events leading to a conclusion, but it has a that it's got the emotional element that's actually going to leave your audience in a different place than you found them. And then world building around that, and I like to think Star Wars originally had that, and maybe in a way it had that in the prequels. I think it had in more in the OT. There's a lot of stories, honestly, in the 80s, where I guess like just storytellers knew that you had to you could have a big flashy movie, but it had to have a heartbeat to it. And I think now, maybe with the drive for international markets, where everyone's just, the Chinese market and the Indian and the American and European all have to be considered all at the same time. So we're just going to give them Transformer 7, I guess. But it does seem like we're giving them spectacle at the expense of I don't know, what do you call it? At the expense of a heartbeat, I guess. And these movies feel like they don't have a heartbeat right now. I don't know. No, I don't know. I mean, on some level, because I like Solo and I like Rogue One, and there's really compelling moments about parents, and so I can't push that too hard.
Rogue One has a lot of good to it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of obvious nostalgic fan service in there. I mean, like right down to the fact that they even used the old, one of the old original wheeled concepts for the AT-AT before they made it a walker.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people who weren't fans of the original trilogy would even recognize that.
Yeah. It was almost too much of fan service. Not for me. Like, I'll just take as much as they want to throw at me.
Sure.
But I guess I think, unfortunately, I feel, well, I don't know, and because they tried it with Solo too, but they threw so much at it, and I think maybe even fan audiences underwhelmed them, I guess, in terms of how they responded to that. And yeah.
I still have not seen Solo, and I have no plans to do so.
It's on Netflix now.
Oh, I know.
Oh my gosh. You liked Rogue One. You'll like Solo, I'm pretty sure. Well, you'll see if you ever see it.
I don't know. I've seen. I'll put it this way. I've watched reviews of it so extensive, I may as well have watched the movie.
Yeah.
Because honestly,
I know that
when I finally got around to watching Last Jedi on Netflix, I had already seen so many extensive reviews of it. There wasn't really anything that I was surprised by.
Yeah.
The one thing that I was surprised by was the gold saucer scene, because all I kept hearing about that was, oh, it's an attack on capitalism. It's an attack on capitalism. I'm like, no, it's not really an attack on capitalism. It's just an honest look at, who finances wars and how that works. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. War is business.
Yeah. Which they could have, which even that would be kind of interesting. I mean, that's kind of undermining the whole fun of Star Wars to begin with. But even that would be interesting if it had a consequence beyond the second act, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
where do they go with that?
It ends up being a pointless side quest, and of course, it does nothing whatsoever. I mean, every opportunity they had throughout that movie to make Rose something other than a complete cringe. It's like they went in the opposite direction. It's like, no, we need more cringe. turn that up to 11.
You know what I saw when I saw her? I saw Battlestar Galactica. Did you ever watch that show?
No, actually.
I saw them because there's some really cool mechanics. And if I remember right, there were some female mechanics. And that's one of the great things about Battlestar is it's got this there's like a stratified military unit, but you get a slice of every layer of that of the hierarchy, I guess. And all the characters are equally. You spend time with people at the very bottom and the very top, and you love them all the same.
Now that is a nice idea because that gives you a good cross section of a society.
Yeah. And when I saw her, I was like, okay, they're going there with Star Wars. That's going to be pretty neat. And I'm trying to remember, it was more to me. It was more like, okay, this is her first acting role, and she's kind of chewing up a bit of the scene. Like she's trying kind of hard, like she doesn't know how to be subtle at times, I guess. And then some of her lines were a little silly, I guess, to say the least. But yeah, I just don't know. I felt like they were proud that she existed, but then they were I think that's what she was there for, I guess, was to exist. They weren't quite sure how to tell a story with her, I guess. So they just brought her along for the ride and had her show up at all the right points. But
that's unfortunate. Before I answer that, I will just make one sidebar comment. I challenge anybody to show me a cooler female mechanic than KYRIE.
Who's KYRIE?
Firefly.
Oh yeah. Well, that's probably even more relevant. Yeah, is Firefly. Yeah, that's the sad thing. These things have been done before. They've been done very well, multiple times, and that knowledge gets lost, I guess, when it's a multi-million-dollar movie.
I mean, Firefly really had it all too, no matter what perspective you looked at it from, because you had a fairly diverse cast. I mean, you had Zoe, you had Shepherd Book.
Yeah.
You didn't necessarily have any Asian characters, but everybody spoke English and Chinese and a smattering of other languages. So you had the culture in there, and it wasn't thrown in there as a mockery. I mean, I think they did a passable job blending it.
Yeah.
And that's difficult, to take two vastly, fundamentally different cultures and kind of mix them together.
Yeah. And you never see that in it's like you could see that in fan art. I mean, like a fanfic kind of story, but I feel like that's the only time we've ever seen it. I feel like in a TV show.
I mean, that is something I'm aiming for with my and it may not be overtly obvious, but a lot of the different civilizations and countries in my world have a mix of cultural influences from what we know.
No, I really enjoy that. Yeah.
And some people might find the juxtaposition kind of off-putting, but I mean, at some point you have to accept that you're not going to please everyone.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say, a lot of these characters, and Rose is a great example. Rey is another great example. It's like audiences. It's like we checked off this and this check boxes on the diversity checklist, on the social justice checklist. Now, please thank us just because this character exists.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Nope.
Don't criticize them. Don't talk about anything they don't. Let's not examine how consistent they are as a character. How let's not talk about their motives. No, none of that. They exist and they satisfy this quota that you didn't know needed to be filled until we told you it did.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's it's a very entitled perspective from my point of view. I mean, I always felt like, I don't care what a character looks like, make them earn my respect as a viewer.
Mm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the reason they show bad guys doing bad guy things in movies is because they want you to hate the bad guy.
Yeah.
It needs to have impact when the hero triumphs over the bad guy,
Earned hatred. Yeah.
and it's not going to mean anything to you if you don't already, if and this is often why they'll set up a character, they'll make that character somewhat emotionally endearing to the audience, and then that character gets killed or hurt or something by the villain, and now you have a reason to hate the villain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now when the hero triumphs over the villain, you have you have all that more reason to celebrate with the hero.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, give me a reason to like the character. Don't just put them there.
I watched Aliens a few days ago,
Uh-huh.
and I mean that's the first time since I was like a kid, and people. I mean, since I saw it when I was a kid, um, like I've already known like that's kind of like a an icon of how to tell a female character well,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't remember, as a kid, I guess this is how it would be, but I just remember thinking she was awesome,
Mm-hmm.
not particularly thinking about if she was she awesome and a female, or even thinking like, male characters are awesome plus they're male, just thinking, wow, she's really cool. And seeing it as an adult, it's fantastic just how far they were willing to push. And again, it felt like because they're not operating on superficial characteristics alone, like she just exists as a female lead, and that makes her awesome. They actually push, and because the plot, the script is so character driven, they actually push her farther than I think people who think that they're just meeting diversity quotas would ever push a female character.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
so she's got so many like, get away from her, you bitch! Like it's like
Oh, yeah.
stuff
You
like, and
know,
it's so satisfying. No one has ever rolled their eyes in the history of watching that movie after
and
you've seen this woman who's just like she's just a dock worker basically. She's just an average woman. She was very average in the first movie. She didn't even show up in Alien. Rewatched that a few months ago. She's not even in the movie pretty much until the second act.
yeah.
Like she's very much like not a hero. There's like five other heroes. They all die, and then she has to learn how to become the hero by earning it, and then she has to do that again in Aliens. It's so great. She earns every single step of the way, just like a good character should, and it's so satisfying. And
And in a
that's
way,
30 years old. Like
and
what?
in a way that speaks to what Anti-Protons is saying about emotional diversity.
Hmm.
And here's the fun thing:
Interesting.
you can even have that within a single character as part of their development. I mean, in a way, they did that with River in Serenity.
Hmm.
I mean, they were building up to it in the Firefly episodes. River is always cowering in a corner, kind of like Smeagol. And
Yeah.
it's like, she'll have these moments, like the moment where she just takes the pistol and just, shoots the three guys without even looking. She
Yeah.
killed them with meth. But it's not really until Serenity, and specifically the end of Serenity,
Mm-hmm.
where she embraces that part of herself.
Yeah.
It's like she stops hiding from the weapon that she was made into, and she becomes the weapon.
Yeah. Yeah. And her weakness is as strong as her strength, and
Exactly.
that's the paradox that makes a good character, that makes her especially a troubled character like her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Which somehow we feel like depriving female characters of weakness somehow makes them better characters, and instead makes them forgettable, which is really sad. Because we've
No.
had female characters that have been great for many years, even up until a decade ago with Firefly
Mm-hmm.
and Serenity, and we're getting a little bit less of that. But I don't know. Was even though like Kira in Soul, there's the female lead in Solo. I feel like was pretty fantastic. So if you ever see that, I think you will like her because her weakness is as strong is as big as her strength. But in this day and age, I think a well written female character does get forgotten because she's not controversial enough
See,
to
it's
be
funny.
remembered.
It's funny because you say Kira, and the first, whenever I hear that name, first character that comes to mind for me is Major Kira from Deep Space Nine, which she was an amazingly fleshed out character. I mean, granted, they had 7 seasons to work with, but
Yeah,
I mean, they really developed her and full range of emotions. I mean, you see her vulnerable, you see her in
yeah,
romantic relationships. So, you know, you see the sexy side, you see her fighting,
yeah.
and you know, especially in the first season, she goes through a lot of, you know, like the first 2 seasons, she goes through a lot of personal conflict because the military that she's part of, in ways, is almost kind of mimicking what the Cardassians were beforehand, the aliens that occupied their planet.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And there's one episode where, in order to get a farmer to safety, she has to kind of, you know, turn on him, and it's an extreme emotional conflict for her.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, so it's like when we talk about the writing and the characters in these new movies, and it's like, oh, you just don't understand nuance. My response is usually, dude, you don't even know what nuance is.
Yeah,
Nuance
yeah.
has been a thing for decades, and it's happened. It's happened with female characters. It's happened with characters of all shapes, sizes, and colors. You just that was before you were born.
Yeah, yeah.
Try looking at something from the past once in a while and see what's actually been done before you think you had an original idea.
Maybe that's the problem. Maybe they just these new up and comers just aren't as educated as they seem, as their credentials seem to imply.
I will agree with Anti-Protons. You know, this won't mean much to you, Matt, but Jadzia Dax was a great character. She had a great personality, and well, obviously, and this was a challenge for the you know, for Terry Farrell, the actress, to play. She had to play the role of a human woman who took on a you know, a symbiont, which was kind of like a worm that got, you know, implanted in the abdominal region. And that worm had gone through at least a half a dozen hosts previously. So, and then the host acquires all their memories. So this is a young human woman that is, you know, infused with hundreds of years of memories, lifetimes as a man, lifetimes as a woman, a father,
Really
a mother. And how do you process all of that?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, on a side note, my wife says hello and good night.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hello, right back. And it's realizing the hour.
Oh yes.
We
Yes,
might
the
need to
hour is
say
later
goodnight
than you
too.
think. The 9 have left Minas Morgul.
Oh, we've done it again, man.
Dude, we're gonna keep doing it.
I'm really enjoying this. Yeah, we're
I
gonna
am
do
too.
it regularly. You're educating me, which is great. It's making me want to check out some Star Trek. I don't know if I'll actually do it, but
You know what? If you're gonna check out any Star Trek, just go straight for Deep Space Nine.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's
Okay.
in it's on Netflix.
Oh really?
Just watch a few episodes.
Yeah, sure.
That was that's when I speak to people who are diehard Star Wars fans who say, "Oh, I just can't get into Star Trek." It's like,
that's the impression I've gotten.
Try Deep Space Nine.
Isn't that the one where there's like a war going on and there's a lot of
the war doesn't really heat up until like the 4th or 5th season.
Okay. Yeah.
But it actually you get a feel for the characters before that. But there's just, I mean, in terms of all the Star Treks, that one's always been my favorite.
Yeah.
And another thing, Anti-Protons just brought up. I mean, this is beautiful the way they did this. The ever ongoing conflict between science and religion, and are we really looking at the same thing with different names?
Yeah. Star Trek's always been great at that, hasn't it?
It has, although Deep Space Nine and also Babylon 5, they take it to an entirely different level. Although Deep Space Nine really focuses on the science versus religion aspect of it, but Babylon 5, I was kind of disappointed when Steven and Serena were like, "Oh, I can't watch it." It's like, okay, yes, the special effects were done on desktop computers. They are a bit dated. However, I will say this: the action sequences, for what they were amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, if you claim to like elves, you cannot not like the Minbari in Babylon 5 because they are the most legit space elves in the fossil record.
Oh man, you got to bring that up with Serena. That's gold.
I mean, oh, come on, Delenn is Space Arwen, for crying out loud. I wasn't being sarcastic when I called Deep Space Nine a ripoff of Babylon 5. There was actually a lawsuit, because originally Straczynski had handed the Babylon 5 Bible over to Paramount, and they had it for over a year because there were talks of them doing the series, and then it's like they handed it back to him. They said, "No, we're not going to go in this direction," and so then he starts producing Babylon 5. He succeeds in producing it through another channel, and meanwhile, like, another year goes by, and now Paramount comes out with this new Star Trek, takes place on a space station. And there are so many parallels.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy. And Patricia Tallman was one of the actresses who played in Babylon 5, and she talked about it. And it's interesting because she had a couple of minor character roles in Star Trek too. I mean, she played a Romulan in an episode of TNG. She actually she played a character in an episode of Voyager. It was a minor character, but like, I took one look at her face. I was like, "That's Patricia Tallman. I'd recognize her anywhere."
The epic, epically long stories that we could tell with Star Trek. It's too big to get into. Even like talking about DS9, like that's just one series, and how many? There's like 9 seasons or something. It's daunting.
Oh yeah.
But
well,
there's a lot of quality there. So
yeah, Deep Space Nine has 7 seasons. I would say, I would say give it a shot. It is the most. I mean, obviously it came out before Voyager, but even in comparison to Voyager, I would say it's the most complete story from beginning to end.
Really?
A solid narrative.
Okay.
Because
another reason.
And I'll say this because you've got a hero, which is Avery Brooks' character, Ben Sisko, best Starfleet captain, period. And then you've got a villain from beginning to end, the Cardassian Gul Dukat.
Mm-hmm.
Which, here's another parallel. In Babylon 5, Delenn's mentor was named Dukat. In Deep Space Nine, the villain, Gul Dukat.
Interesting.
I mean, what a coincidence, right? I mean, I'll say it, I
Mhm.
love both shows, but you know, and this is I've said this before. I have no exclusivity clause when it comes to sci-fi or space opera or space fantasy. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's good, I'll sit down and watch it and enjoy it. Oh God, Garrick, you will love Matt. You will love Garrick's banter with Bashir, Dr. Bashir.
Okay. Okay. Is it like
Garrick,
Stargate kind of banter?
I don't know how to answer that, but I'll put it this way: Garrick is a simple tailor, or so he says. He actually
Okay.
has a far more extensive resume than that, but it would be too much of a spoiler to tell you. You have to just.
Yeah.
He's so much more than he seems, and um, you know, this is actually interesting. It's a bit of a non sequitur here, but Dr. Bashir is played by Siddig El Fadil, aka Alexander Siddig, who actually plays the angel Gabriel in the movie The Nativity Story.
Oh, I never saw that. Yep.
You should. It's a good telling. I mean, obviously they take creative license. They have the wise men come to the manger rather than the house 2 years later, but
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and you know they pretty much follow Catholic tradition. You know, it's Melchior, Gaspar, and Balthazar.
Sure. Yeah.
But what's interesting is Joseph is played by the same guy that plays Poe Dameron.
Yeah, I did pick up. I do remember that though. Yeah.
And Mary, most people will not pick up on this, is because you only saw her for like 3 seconds. She was the Naboo queen from Revenge of the Sith.
I think she was. She's Whale Rider girl, right? You saw that?
Might be.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, she's a Maori New Zealander, right?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. Yeah. Well, if it's a decent, I saw. I don't know. I don't know why I didn't see it.
It's actually, we have it on DVD. It's one of our traditional Christmas movies.
Mm-hmm. Well, I trust your instincts and your taste and other things. So I'll check that out then. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, with that, let's unfortunately call it a night here.
Yep.
Save more chats for next week.
Definitely.
Would you be interested in what's your thoughts on preterism? Have you come across the term in time stuff? Whether or not Revelation has a lot to do with what happened in 70 AD or not, or if it's a distant future for us kind of content. There's a friend of mine that wants to talk about it, and I thought that's the sort of thing like I need to actually read a bit on before and not be exhausted to actually chat about. So we're going to talk about that next week if you wanted to jump in on that.
Okay.
If that doesn't interest you, that's completely fine. But
I may begin by listening until I'm more familiar with the arguments, and I will, I'm sure at some point, have my own thoughts to add.
Sure. Okay. Well then we'll shoot for next Tuesday.
Sounds good. Looks like you've done some amazing work tonight, as usual.
Thanks, man. It's I got myself I told myself I'd draw more fabric because I like doing that, but I think I've set myself up because now all the the camels have fabric, and like half of this is like making sure, okay, no, which camel had the square design and then which had the so just keeping a consistency across the panels has been more pain than it should be. So
yeah, I actually had the thought of I thought of how I would do a couple of the scenes I've already written so far as comic panels, if I get a chance to sketch a couple of those out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That might be
that'd be really cool.
Yeah, like specifically the one I had in mind. I'm assuming you read the latest draft all the way to the end with chapter 8.
I have not.
Oh. Come on, man! What are you waiting for?
I read the chapter. I read chapters through chapter 6.
Okay, you're definitely going to want to read 7 and 8 because 7 takes you back to Dash and Cray,
mm-hmm.
and then 8 actually starts out kind of chill, and then it injects quite a bit of action towards the end.
Okay. Well, I'm excited for an action scene. I'm really liking the dialogue, but I'm excited to see how you handle action.
Yeah, still working on that. I mean, it's kind of like the build up to action. It's a lot of I mean, there's a lot of dialogue. It's mostly between Kelson and Valerie, which, you know, if anybody's reminded of Master Chief's banter with Cortana, thank you.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of the idea.
Oh, good. Okay, that's one of my favorite duos of all time. So it'll be good to be reminiscing about that as I read it.
Yeah, I mean, from that perspective, she kind of almost has like a doting motherly point of view towards him. So it's like she almost treats him like a child in her care.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be cool.
Yep.
Well, I'll be reading that. I'll be able to. I'll make sure I read up by next Tuesday.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. Be good. Okay, well.
All right, well.
Kelson. Have a.
Hey, you can call me Mike. That's fine.
Okay, cool. We've already established that, haven't we?
Yeah.
Well, Mike, have a good rest of your night.
You too, Matt.
And I'll talk to you on the internets between now and then.
Oh yes, absolutely. Antiprotons, you have a good night also. And
yeah,
I caught somebody else in there too. It was LEH.
Oh, did we have someone else?
No. I believe so.
Whoever else that was, thanks for stopping in. And Antiprotons, thanks for hanging out the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been cool chatting with you. I have to talk to you again soon. Yeah. everyone have a good evening. We'll do this again next Tuesday about same time.
Sounds good.